Hello, everyone. Welcome to Work Unleashed Live. I'm Dan O'Leary, Director of Partner Growth and Strategy here at Box. And my goal is to help ensure that our customers are successful. And as part of that effort, I hope my conversations with industry executives and business leaders are going to help you navigate the new normal, or whatever that is, of work today, to help you and your teams do your best work from anywhere at any time. Today, I'm happy to kick off this series with Paul Chapman, CIO, Chief Information Officer at Box. Paul is responsible for leading our global IT strategy, driving the development and delivery of some of our key IT initiatives, and he supports our company's growth as well as our customer base. Prior to Box, Paul had a legendary career where he was the CIO of HP Software. He also served as the Vice President of Global Infrastructure and Cloud Operations at VMware. Heard of that company. Given Paul's past experiences and current discussions with his peers at Zoom, Slack, and Okta, I've invited him here today to discuss his views on some of the increasing needs for remote workers and to share what we should all be thinking about as we approach this new normal. So, welcome, Paul.
Thanks, Dan. Great introduction. Appreciate it.
You bet, Paul. So I have some hard questions and some easy questions, but I want to dig right in. I know your time and all of our audience's time is super valuable today. So to get the conversation going, I'd love to know a little bit about what you personally, as a leader, are thinking about in terms of new ways of working for work locations. Have you tried working from anywhere new, maybe in your house? Just an easy one to get you started.
Well, I guess I always used to say work was a state of mind, not a place you went to. Although these days it feels like a place you're actually at. I haven't really tried new places necessarily around the home. Although, given the fact that it seems like my wine consumption in the evenings has gone up more so than it did previously, I've started to take some of my meetings on my Peloton bike. So while others are sat in their chairs or at their desks, I'm huffing and puffing away on my Peloton. And I've seen some super creative memes that are out there today. People can get very, very creative with some of these work from home memes. But the best I've come up with, I think, is on Fridays, which luckily for me, it's today. And having grown up in England, I'll often put a beer in each of the rooms in my house and go on a Friday evening pub crawl. That's sort of my entertainment there.
It's the scavenger hunt that everyone can look forward to.
I'm over 21. I'm over 21. I'm allowed.
Okay, good to know. I really appreciate that. Also, working from Peloton. That is, that's definitely a new one.
We actually, for those that don't know, we actually at Box, we have a work from home hack Slack channel, and you can actually hack your Peloton for conducting Zoom meetings as well. I haven't done that because it might void my warranty, but just in case anybody wants to take a look at that.
It's true. I actually did set up Peloton to run Box. That is true. It works pretty well. It's amazing what you can do when you have some time. So glad to know that you and I are making use of our productive time. But as a meteor question, Paul, it's a great lead-in. As you're talking to other colleagues, and we mentioned some of the great partners and companies that you've been in conversation with, like Slack and Okta and Zoom, what are you hearing from other IT leaders that's at the forefront of their minds as they're thinking about connecting their remote teams?
Yeah, well, I think for a lot of leaders, the most important thing is, we're really leading with empathy today, right? I mean, the focus on the human element, what's happening around us is just is unprecedented. And, while we may not physically be connected with our teams, we do need to be socially and emotionally connected. And it's really important. And so from the start, our first order principles at Box, just like they are at many other companies, has really, first take care of yourselves. Take care of your families, and then ultimately, take care of the work from there. But it's really been a people first, led sort of approach, I think, that most organizations are taking. And ultimately, like I said, take care of the work after you're safe and your family's safe.
So I was expecting the CIO to talk about computers, not people. So that is very encouraging to hear that people are. That is great to hear.
We can get to that after.
Yeah. Well, are you finding that there's new opportunities that are also emerging from this shift as we all start to, as you know, work from anywhere?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, initially the work from home happened very, very quickly, right? And we, initially, it seems almost like legacy conversations. I don't know, 6, 7, 8 weeks ago now, we were talking about this having to move from home quickly. And then, everybody was scrambling to make sure that they had the right sort of technology architecture in place and service enablers in place. And, we saw this significant increase in the usage of platforms for communication, video and chat and so on. But I think the opportunities now, it's sort of, as we've said before, it feels like we've been forced into the world's largest work from home experiment. And if you would have said to me, 2 months ago that the new champion of accelerating your digital agenda would be COVID-19, I would have thought you're crazy. But if you look at where we are today, our business models have been disrupted, our operations have been disrupted, our cultures have been disrupted, and our technology architecture has been disrupted. And so as you look at the companies that may have been better prepared for this, maybe had stronger resiliency in their infrastructure or their architecture for running their business operations and so on. What we are learning, though, is that definitely we're going to come out of this with a stronger way of working globally, and we're certainly going to learn a lot. I think we're going to see, a significant push for investments in accelerating, digital architecture and business resiliency. I think we're going to see a different way of working, and we can touch on that in just a few. But certainly, what we're learning about certain productivity, the workday, efficiencies, and the technologies that are supporting this, this massive work from home environment. And I think additionally to that, organizations need to prepare. This isn't about making short-term investments because this is a short-term event. Without an effective therapy or vaccine over the next 9, 12, 18, 24 months, we could see rolling shutdowns happening on a frequent basis. We could see waves of this for the foreseeable future. So, how do we make sure that the next time is not an event, but business is, well, you used the term normal earlier, but I like to refer to it as business is unusual these days.
Business as unusual is a great way to put it. And I definitely want to echo that, in times of disruption and uncertainty, that having a plan is so critical, especially over the medium and the long term. And I'm curious, as a business leader and a leader of people yourself, how are you helping your teams make these shifts? Any surprises as you are starting to look at this, not as something measured in days or weeks, but something that's going to need to be actioned on over the long term?
Yeah, I think that, we learn a lot, right? There are certain organizations that I think may have felt prepared but weren't prepared. Some companies have not grown up in what you would call a work from anywhere style. Fortunately at Box, our ethos from day one has always been to set up an environment that allows our business to run and our employees to work from anywhere, any place, anytime, any device. That's been in our ethos from day one. And so that just inherently makes you more resilient to sort of these disruptions that can occur. But some companies have not grown up in what you would call a work from anywhere style. Whether that's sort of culturally, at Box, we have a very forward-thinking, innovative culture. And so we're sort of a little bit more tuned to this. And you can speed up some things, but you cannot speed up the culture of work from anywhere. What I do think, though, is that we've seen the organization and many other organizations, have rallied and have really focused in on, again, making sure that from the human side of things, that we've definitely seen some patterns in the way the workday has changed. We've seen people starting to work earlier, work later. There's a little bit more of a flexible schedule in the way people are working. Although I have to say, it does feel like we're working harder than ever, back to back with meetings and so on. But I think we also have to be very careful, as we sort of settle into sort of what is a little bit business as unusual now. We also have to focus in on that human side again, making sure there's no risk of burnout, mental fatigue, and stress. In Box, we actually have a wellness portal where we do fitness challenges and personalized wellness goals and health assessments. And, there's online, we do online jujitsu classes and things like that. And we also use the mindfulness app. There I am forgetting it. Maybe I should use it. A Headspace.
It's in your head.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's a mindfulness app. Provides guided, meditation and tips and practices for sleep exercises and general wellness and things like that. But for sure, people aren't working 9 to 5 anymore. The workday's flattening, and the structure of the workday is blurring together without sort of the daily commutes and things. So definitely learning a lot in how the organization's operating there.
Yeah, and I'm hearing you loud and clear that a lot of the biggest surprises have been around the human element, but it sounds like a lot of the opportunities too, and that's really great. And I want to echo, I think what I'm hearing you say is there's a call here for continued resilience, not just in infrastructure, but in people. So is there anything that's new in your planning to think about how you're going to manage continued disruption, as you called it, not just now, but over the next couple months and quarters?
For sure. So, I've spoken to hundreds and hundreds of CIOs, whether that's through webinars or closed door gatherings or one-on-ones in the last few weeks. And I think this is one of those situations, as I mentioned, I believe we're going to come out of this with a stronger way of working and investments that are going to accelerate the digital agenda, the digital transformation for a lot of organizations. Legacy infrastructure, on-premise infrastructure and services are just under massive pressure right now and are proving an inhibitor for businesses to function effectively in a lot of cases. And there's going to be a significant push for these investments. And I think that what we'll see is business continuity will be something that I think is really sort of a yesterday's term. I much prefer to use the term business resiliency. I think that this will be an opportunity for organizations to really think through how they provide technology to support more agility, more flexibility, and the ability to withstand disruption, so that technology is out of the way when it comes to enabling an organization to continue to operate effectively. And most importantly, your employees to have the right levels of communication exchange. When we just look at some of the statistics that we see in the consumption of Box and our Slack, Zoom, or whatever the communication exchange services are, we've just seen a significant increase in the usage of those services, and we've seen it globally. So definitely having those types of services in place is going to be critical, because if your employees can't communicate, then it's going to be very hard to run your business processes. The ability to take orders and ship product and recognize revenue and things like that.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. I think it's been interesting to hear a lot of companies that have been stuck in their ability to make this transition because they've had files that were stuck in their office or behind a VPN where the capacities weren't built for that, or even legacy technologies that were fine a couple months ago, like email or file attachments that just don't hold up to the velocity and the resiliency that you mentioned. So it's really interesting to hear. Now, one of the things we talked about in preparing for this, Paul, was we talked about opportunities, and I think it's great to hear how optimistic you are about what this means for IT business leaders as well as end users who are participating in this technology. But we also know that when people are moving to work from home or working from anywhere, as you called it, that this can introduce some risks, right? Whether it's personal devices or unknown networks or the loss of a perimeter. And I'm curious, from your position, looking at this as a CIO, how are you thinking about keeping remote teams and their devices and their technology and their work secure at this time?
Yeah, well, this definitely, responding to a crisis doesn't mean that security threat or compliance risks are any less pervasive. And I think one of the unintended consequences of accelerated working from home has been this increase in sort of bad actors and security breaches and things like that. Sort of the attack surface is now sort of exploded into sort of a billion home offices or whatever it is, right? We've certainly seen at Box an uptick, and I've heard this from others as well, an uptick in COVID-19 malware attacks using, bogus news articles, malicious emails. So companies need to be hyper-focused, not only on deploying the right technologies. I've heard people talk about speed over perfection, and I think speed over perfection is good as long as you're not ignoring the security aspects of that. Maybe that's perfection being turning on, capabilities and features, but not imperfection with risk. So, like I say, I think the attack surface is changed drastically on us. So thinking through your security architecture is really important. So, and it needs to be built in. And now as we talk about people accelerating their digital agenda and accelerating turning on a lot of new services that are going to enable more resiliency, making sure that you think through the security architecture and building that in. Certainly one of the reasons, at Box, we've built a lot of security capabilities into our platform. So that makes it easier for organizations to roll out, because you're not trying to bolt on a lot of security capabilities around it. So that to me right now is probably one of the biggest risks, because there is this need to accelerate the digital agenda, the digital transformation, accelerating the turning on of services to move away from some of the, as you mentioned, sort of VPN. I've heard, a number of CIOs tell me that, they're a company of 5,000, and previous they may have had the capacity to support maybe 500 remote workers concurrently, but moving very, very quickly to supporting 5,000 has been a really, really big struggle for them.
That's a huge leap in terms of, not only network capacity, but also the staff needed to run it. So for customers, maybe Box customers or folks that have some of the tools you mentioned that have them in their infrastructure, but haven't invested, is this a time for them to be figuring out how to take advantage maybe of some of those investments they have that have not been fully realized? Like, is this the time to push the gas pedal on some of those investments that have been made in the past?
Oh, absolutely. So I think this is where, some organizations may have been trading off investments in, an architecture like this that, at the expense of maybe daily operations, or may have been struggling internally to convince of an ROI or a total, an ROI for the investments. And now I think this is forcing and actually proving out, and this is where I think the positive, where positives will come, proving out that this is the right model to run your business on, and so therefore this will help accelerate, I think those investments, and move maybe further away from maybe a lot of CIOs have been wanting to move at a faster pace, have been wanting to retire some technical debt and some legacy sort of operational aspects of their environment, and this is a way to accelerate that. Like I said, I think that most technology leaders now have an opportunity to be courageous, stand tall, and go get those investments that are needed to accelerate your business, your digital agenda.
Absolutely. Well, in connecting some of the dots, what I'm hearing you say is that accelerating your digital transformation and agenda is going to have a huge impact as well on the human aspect and the people that work with these technologies, as well as their ability to get work done from anywhere. So I really like how you're looking at this, not only from technology, but also from the aspect of the people that use it, which is fantastic.
Yeah, and I think it varies business to business and organization to organization. I mean, obviously there are some organizations that are unfortunately are experiencing massive, just business disruption. Their business model has been massively disrupted because of this, and that's in a different sort of, they're in a different place right now, and totally feel for those organizations. For the other organizations that are looking to figure out how they prepare themselves, like I said before, without an effective therapy or vaccine over the next 6, 12, 24 months, and we could see rolling shutdowns happening on a frequent basis. How do we make sure that the next time this is not an event, but sort of business as unusual? and who knows when that's going to happen. And we can talk a little bit about what it looks like moving back to the workplace in just a moment. You can't speed up the culture of an organization, but you can definitely speed up the rolling out of services to support this. I've heard 3 years now in 3 months, and I'm not quite sure I fully get what that really means, but it sounds like I've heard this a couple of times now, that people are looking at what they would have paced out over a 3-year period, and are now looking to deploy or make those investments in 3 months. So that'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, you bet. That is very quick. Well, and speaking of, you mentioned that you're also thinking about what's the future of work going to look like over the next 3 months to 3 years, as some of us may have an opportunity to transition back to an office. Are there any important changes you're thinking about either making or that you're aware of that other business leaders may want to be thinking about as well?
Yeah, well, without going into too much detail on sort of what you would call the workplace services environment, what changes might happen there. There's certainly a reluctance, I think, generally to rush back into the office, even after mandatory self-quarantines are lifted. I think, our buildings and our campuses, they're built to bring groups of people together. They're designed sort of for anti-social distancing, if you think about it that way, right? It's, campuses with thousands of people, and, offices with lots of movement and people in close proximity, conference rooms, whatever it might be, were sort of designed for, anti-social distancing. And so depending on sort of what happens there, and there's lots of ways that people are thinking about what the future office space looks like. I do think that most organizations believe that re-entry will be very gradual. I think there's a lot of functions that are proving that they can work effectively from a remote location. We have the right tools and service enablers and communication exchange services in place to allow that to happen. It's different for people that have to go to, work in lab space or manufacturing facilities, where physically they have to be connected to the workplace there. I think employees actually, want flexible schedules. That's something that's been happening for, been a need for a long time. And I think the daily commutes and so on. And I think this may be a reason why productivity has gone up across the board. And I think why we're seeing a flattening of the workday as well. So I think we're going to see for sure a hybrid working environment as the new norm. I don't think we're going to go back to 100% the way we were previously. Now, exactly what that looks like per organization, of course, is to be determined. I think that's why there's a little bit of wait and see. I will say this, that it was a lot easier moving to work remote overnight than it is moving back. There's a lot of complexity in the moving back. And so we're sort of in a little bit of wait and see, because it's unprecedented. We don't have any rear view mirror data that we can rely upon to see. I always like to say, I like to boldly go where others have gone before. Not in all cases, but most cases. But in this case, we're all boldly going where no one's gone before. So figuring this out together and collectively, which is why I'm a big believer in, the wisdom of our community like this, bringing people together to share and perspectives and what they're learning and what they're experiencing is really important for all of us.
Absolutely, Paul. Well said. So speaking of wisdom for the community, what is any last or final words of wisdom or advice for other IT and business leaders that are sitting in a similar position to you, looking at this and wondering probably the same things?
Well, I think I'd sum it up by saying, no one's working 9 till 5 anymore. The workday's flattening. The structure of the workday is blurring. We need to continue to lead with empathy and focus on the human element. Making sure we continue to, make sure our people are healthy, both physically and mentally. One thing that I think is important, and this will be where you will find some people do want to get back into the office environment. We have to be mindful of people that are living alone, somewhat isolated conditions. That's a real thing, and we have to be mindful of that. Often we talk about people working at home and having all these additional stressors in their lives, dogs barking and kids running around. But we also have a lot of people that, live alone in, one single, studios or single apartments or what have you, and thinking about those people as well. And then build plans that plan for this situation to come back and make investments such that it doesn't become an event, that it becomes sort of business as unusual. And I think, again, as I said a couple of times, I think we need to make sure as technology leaders, we're leading with courage to make the investments in the resiliency of our operations and our technology enablers, making sure our employees have the right communication exchange services, and our business processes are resilient to large disruptions. So yeah, and of course, I'll emphasize one more time, be mindful of security and risk and building security into your decisions and not bolt it on later, because you need to be proactive, not reactive to the security risks that are happening out there right now.
Absolutely. And Paul, that is so great. And I want to again say thank you so much for sharing your insights today. I know you have to run to an important call. So thank you again for joining us today, sharing your insights and your anecdotes. So many great takeaways for me personally to understand about our resilience, empathy, security, as well as courage. These aren't just themes, these are things that IT leaders we know, probably you out there are living every day. So thank you for that. For those of you that were able to join us for the whole time, thank you so much. Really, really glad you spent some time with Paul and I today. You could have been anywhere in the world. You were here with us today. I appreciate that, of course. We will be posting this session along with some additional resources that we've put together to help support that secure remote work that Paul mentioned on box.com/remote. It's pretty easy, box.com, box.com, just like my shirt, /remote. And you're going to find a ton of great resources there to help you, your teams, your employees, as we're thinking about not just this shift to working from anywhere, but as Paul noted, how our path back to the work as unusual is going to be. So on behalf of myself and the entire Box team, thank you so much for joining us. We will see you next time on the next session of Work Unleashed Live. See you soon.